Hello and welcome to another week of Behind the Mic here on ASTV Productions. Thanks for joining us once again. I'm your host, Jonathan Hodgson, back for another conversation with a great sportscaster, and I'm really excited for this week. We're going to dive back into baseball again, and joining me this week in a couple of minutes will be Georgia State baseball broadcaster Caleb Gay, and in the middle segment, we're anticipating being joined by college and high school baseball coach ALLEN COX. Caleb is somebody I've known for about the last year or so. He's got a great story to him as an ex-college baseball player. Little bit infield, but mainly a pitcher at Georgia Gwinnett College, and before that, Alabama A&M at the D1 level. Turned that into a pursuit in broadcasting and found a home this year at Georgia State at the D1 level for his first year of broadcasting. And so we'll get into his story of playing and how that turned into a broadcasting pursuit and how the two kind of play off of each other. And then when we get ALLEN in here, we're going to have some fun with him. ALLEN knows both of us. He was one of Caleb's coaches at Georgia Gwinnett College. ALLEN is a longtime veteran hitting coach at the high school and college levels, as well as having been a major league scout and instructor at different events. We'll get into some stories with him, some discussions with him, as he has had a number of players he has coached in over the years go on to do some things in baseball, and we'll talk to him about how he looks at players he's coached who go on to do other things, whether they be in baseball or, like Caleb, in broadcasting. And of course, he's a good friend of mine as well from his days with the Okotoks Dogs Academy in Alberta. So we will take our first break here, and we'll get going with it. On the other side of this break, we'll bring in our guest for the week, Caleb Gay. Thanks for watching, and before we go to that break, I'll remind you to visit us at astvproductions.com. That's where you find all of our shows and live game broadcasts here on ASTV. We also simulcast on Facebook, and you can find further updates over on Twitter as well. So thanks for watching. We'll be right back with Caleb Gay here on Behind the Mic on ASTV Productions.
At Collins Hotel, we have you and your family's comfort in mind. Relax in one of our 16 suites featuring king or queen-size beds and 36-inch TVs. Suites also include a mini fridge and other kitchen appliances to make your stay as comfortable as possible. During your stay in Pilot Mound, visit Weiser's Restaurant, our attached family-friendly restaurant and bar. It is the perfect location to host group meals, dine with the family, or unwind after a hockey game. Come in and meet our friendly staff offering daily specials on food and drinks, Wing Night Wednesdays, Buffet Fridays, and multiple TVs to watch the game. Weiser's is the place to be. Collins Hotel and Weiser's Restaurant and Bar, located across the street from Blackjack Stewart Arena off Highway 3 in Pilot Mound.
And once again, welcome back to Behind the Mic here on ASTV Productions. Jonathan Hodgson back with you Joined now by our guest this week, Georgia State baseball broadcaster Caleb A. Caleb, thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir. Always. Thanks for having me.
Where are you joining us from today?
I'm back at my place in Atlanta, Georgia.
Very nice. And you're just coming off the baseball season at Georgia State and the Sun Belt Conference. Just give us a quick update on how the season went for the team.
Yeah, it was a crazy ride. Brad Stromdahl's first full season as head coach and my first season over there. So they got off to a crazy schedule. Everybody was talking about it before the season. They were running through, all the SEC East and just seeing how they stacked up with some of the best teams in the country, and then kind of had an unpredictable season from there. Probably beat some teams that on paper they shouldn't have beat, and lost to some teams that on paper they probably shouldn't have lost to. But it was a lot of fun. They got real hot towards the end of the year and doing the Sun Belt Conference tournament. And Riverwalk Stadium, where home of the Montgomery Biscuits, was pretty cool to finish things out.
Yeah, and we'll get into your experiences here as we go along. But I was looking at their schedule, and a little bit of a tough record overall, about 19-37. But I look at the conference record at 12-12, and some of the out of conference games that Georgia State played this spring. You played a series at Vanderbilt. You played it at West Virginia, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Florida. All kinds of heavy hitter ranked opponents. Mm-hmm. That from their perspective, that must have been a great test to play an out of conference schedule like that, and then taking it to you. That must have been pretty cool to be able to call games in some of those places.
Yeah, it definitely was cool. Thrown into the fire, probably the right term for that. I definitely was intimidated by it at times. Thought that weekend one against West Virginia probably was going to sit and listen and learn more than anything. And the head play-by-play guy, was like, hey, I got a basketball game to do downtown. It looks like this is going to go into extras. You got to finish it. And, that was kind of the start of just figuring it out, trial and error. We had all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But, yeah, going on the road right away to Gainesville, where I grew up, doing a lot of games. So that was a real special moment for me, going to Lexington, Kentucky, and, up into a 3-tier booth in Vanderbilt to do my first, game by myself was a lot. But definitely by the end of the year, felt more comfortable and had a lot of fun. Got to see a lot of cool places and do a lot of broadcasting.
Now, I alluded to it a little bit in the opening and when we brought you on, but give us a little bit of your background and how you arrived in the booth. Former college pitcher in a couple of spots. Tell us about the playing days.
Well, I grew up playing high school ball in Jacksonville, Florida. I went to a really small 2A Christian school. Really didn't get much notoriety. All the guys here that I coach in travel ball are always talking about, we need to go play in perfect game and exposure. And I mean, I played travel ball with my buddies, for 3 years and on a small scale, played high school baseball on a small scale. But my senior year, we did end up in the state championship. I was fortunate enough to do pretty well my senior year. And so kind of marketed myself, had some help from some good mentors and coaches. And I was pretty prideful. I won't lie to you. I had some good D2s down in Florida that I probably should have gone to in retrospect. But Alabama A&M was a Division I full ride, and, that kind of won me over. So I decided to head up there and go play some SWAC baseball, looking forward to playing, big-time schools that I felt like overlooked me. The old high school senior that feels like he's better than, the offers that are being put on the table. And I just didn't take care of my arm at A&M, man. Played a lot of second base and pitched a lot. Didn't really know what I was doing as far as taking care of my arm and taking care of my body. They had a tough season over there. I met a lot of good people. And then a buddy of mine who was supposed to go to Appalachian State asked me if I was looking to transfer and told me he was going to Georgia Gwinnett College. And I was like, what? Where is that? I've never heard of it before. And so ended up over at Georgia Gwinnett College with Cox and those guys, and absolutely loved it. Got into, broadcasting and journalism and stuff there, and just fell in love with it.
Yeah, and I can't wait to bring in Allen here in a little bit and tell some stories. And as I mentioned earlier, he knows both of us quite well, and he was your coach there at Georgia Gwinnett College. One thing on the playing side, and we'll transition it into broadcasting here in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But going from as you mentioned, starting at D1 to going to Georgia Gwinnett College, which is an NAIA program that's turned itself into a power. Just won the World Series. You must be proud of that as a recent alum. But talk to us about NAIA baseball, because it's a little bit of a different beast sometimes.
And it is the wild, wild west. I was not prepared for it at all. I thought if I was throwing on Friday nights and playing second base at a Division I, that I would be, one of the best guys on the field, going to an NAIA, no matter where I went, didn't know anything about it. Actually, when I called my head coach to let him know that I was transferring, he asked me where I was going. And I told him that I was going to an NAIA closer to home. And he kind of laughed and was like, my sister could play NAIA. And long story short, he's an NAIA head coach now up at Martin Methodist, Tennessee. So I guess NAIA kind of got put on the map big time. But, man, I always lovingly say that, there was some talent on my Division I team for sure, some guys that played professional baseball, but Georgia Gwinnett College was a different level. I mean, my roommate was throwing 98 miles an hour and, had like a wife and a dog and was like 26 years old. Just stuff I wasn't prepared for. I couldn't barely get on the field, man. I thought I was going to go play second base, and we had a kid that was 5'6" that was hitting home runs and hitting 500 that's in the Diamondbacks org, and, multiple 95+ arms. So it was crazy, man.
How much do you stay in touch with people back there, or even just keep tabs on the program? As I mentioned, they won the World Series recently. How much do you keep tabs on them?
This year, pretty steadily. It was tough when Georgia State and GGC were playing at the same time. I didn't get to go to as many games as I wanted, but I played there last year when the season got cut short. That was my senior season. We were 23-2 and ranked number 2 in the country when everything got shut down. So a lot of those kids were still on the team. So I kept in touch and tried to cultivate those relationships for sure. They actually had me back up there not too long ago for senior day, since I didn't get to have one last year. So that was really cool. That was a special moment. And, because of that, definitely kept in touch with the guys as they went to the World Series, which I guess this would make the 3rd straight year that they've been now, because there was no World Series last year. So I got to be a part of 2 of them. And then, the one this year, I'm glad they walked away victorious. It was pretty cool to watch and be a part of.
Now, one of the things that always interests me with former players turned broadcasters is how that had an effect on them when they get to the booth. And like you said, you spent a lot of time as a pitcher. And I've known a couple of pitchers to turn into broadcasters, and I sometimes find that when they talk about managers or coaches, a lot of catchers make really good managers, and you see a lot of them. And I've always found that pitchers can make really good broadcasters. After your playing experience and spending a lot of time, you have to know the ins and outs of everything going on, and you spend a lot of time in the dugout watching games. What kind of an effect, what kind of an influence did being a former player and pitcher have on you when you went to the booth?
Well, I've never really thought about, being in the dugout, but I think that probably had a lot to do with, the emphasis that I put behind, energy in the dugout, momentum as it would shift from one side to another, that you could kind of feel. It was palpable, even up in the broadcast booth. And even little stuff like when the pitching coach goes out, just knowing situationally probably what he's saying and not having to fill that dead time with pulling something from a sheet of paper, but being able to kind of guess what the pitching coach is going out there to talk to a young kid about, who's got an 8-0 lead and he's just nervous and he's not throwing strikes, stuff like that. Conversations that, people are having pregame or postgame, things that guys need to work on. Just being a part of those conversations for such a long time, it was kind of easy to fill fans in that wanted to know what those conversations were like, being up in the booth. And then from the playing side, like you said, definitely an emphasis on, pitch type and swings and stuff like that. That was just a lot of fun, man. I think me and you had to have a couple of conversations because you were like, hey, you're doing good, but you're saying curveball right out of the hand. And I was like, that's just what I noticed, and I'm waiting. So I kind of had to get a little more patient because, like, right when a guy would let something go, if I could see spin, I was like, slider, and then I'm waiting to to say what else happened. But that was part of the trial and error and constructive feedback. So it was a lot of fun, and I definitely think playing for so long and kind of realizing early on that I wanted to do some type of journalism or broadcasting or coaching, I put on a different hat, while I was in the dugout. If I knew I wasn't going to pitch or I knew I wasn't going to play, I was either sitting right next to the coach or I was thinking of questions that I would have asked our starting pitcher, if I was going to interview him afterwards, and kind of preparing myself mentally for this role, I think allowed me to expedite the process of getting a little more comfortable. Yeah,
and I was going to ask about that too. How much you were actively preparing for this next baseball life, even when you were playing. You mentioned taking broadcasting and journalism to get the training, but you were actively starting to think like a media type even when you were playing.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was something they kind of let me do at Georgia Gwinnett College, which was super cool. Not only my professors, but the athletics department. I mean, I had to basically get an English degree since there was no communications. But even in doing that, my professors were really cool about saying, hey, what do you want to do with this degree? And when I would say broadcast journalism, sports broadcasting, they would let me tailor every project, every paper towards something that I could put in a portfolio or a resume. That was cool, really cool. Something I'll never forget is I was taking African-American literature, and my end of the year project, my teacher was like, you should do a podcast on, LeBron James and whether you think we'll study him the way we study Michael Jordan. Like, will he go down in history books as a human, not just as an athlete? And I was like, that sounds like so much fun. And, having to talk to myself on air like that, I realized very quickly that I wasn't ready to go broadcast yet, and that I needed to get some more help, get some more advice. And then, like I said, doing journalism, took applied journalism and stuff like that. And I was playing, I was in a jersey ready to pitch. And after the game, before I even changed, I was trying to grab the guy who went 3 for 3 or grab the head coach and do an interview and then go home and write an article. So it was a lot of fun. I definitely thought, right after school, I'd probably slide somewhere into journalism, but with the minor leagues being shut down, I was like, okay, what's next? What can I get better at? So
was there ever a time in your first year this spring with Georgia State being on the mic where you would see something going on in the game, whether it's a situation, whether it's what might be said in the mound meeting, whether it's a pitch selection that you might not have done? Was there ever a time when you were on the mic where you had to check that old pitcher in you and make sure you kept it, broadcast worthy?
For sure. Not even just, check the pitcher in me, but just the baseball player and honestly, even coaching travel ball and stuff, knowing Strom for so long, every once in a while, there'd be a double steal. I remember at Vanderbilt, Kumar Rocker was throwing on Sunday. We were going to see Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter back to back. There was so many, they didn't even ask me questions walking in the stadium. They just assumed I was a scout. And I went up there, and Rocker could not throw a strike in the first inning, and he was just walking the world. And the night before in the Saturday game, Vanderbilt had come back to beat Georgia State late, and I was sitting down eating dinner with Strom. He was like, man, I should have double stole. And everybody was like, what? And he was like, there's not many times you're going to get guys on first and second against Vanderbilt. Like, I should have just pulled the double steal and seen how it went. So they get guys on first and second. Kumar's throwing 98, up at the heads. I was like, please don't double steal. Please don't double steal. I just thought for sure. There they go. Catcher throws him out to end the inning, threw behind the runner. They were stealing second and third, threw behind the runner at second base, nailed him to end the inning. And I wanted to just like let out a frustrated breath. I was like, dang it. But, had to just call the play and mute myself real quick. But there was a lot of moments, and being fans of the players, like being friends and fans of the players and wanting them to do so well. If there was a bad call or something, not being frustrated like for that guy, or, rooting for a guy to get a pinch hit late in the game just because I thought he was a great dude and was hoping he would tear it up, and not showing like a lot of frustration that, he didn't get his job done just because I wanted it so bad for him. It was kind of tough to manage, but I think it helped me be better at times for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned Strom. That's Georgia State head coach Brad Stromdahl. He's recently taken over their program there at Georgia State, and that's another person that you have a lot of familiarity with. Just give us a little bit of the background between yourself and Coach Stromdahl.
Oof, that's going to be tough to keep short. Strom is definitely my guy. I wasn't very productive as a player for him at Georgia Gwinnett College. I was injured. I had 3 elbow surgeries while I was there. And we kind of butted heads at times because he was like, "You're not hurt, you're just scared." And every time I'd go and get an MRI and I'd have some new fracture or bone chip or need to get my nerve moved. And so, I wasn't his shortstop. I wasn't his ace guy. He didn't have to look out for me or keep up with me after baseball. I think most coaches probably wouldn't have. But when I finished up at GGC last year and the season got canceled, he was one of the first phone calls and just asked me what my plan was, what I was thinking about doing. And I was like, well, I wanted to go, try to do journalism in minor league baseball somewhere, but it looks like there's going to be no minor league baseball with COVID. And he asked me if I had thought about broadcasting, and I said, yeah, for sure. I just don't know where to get started. And he said, hey, we have an opening. We're going to be playing, a crazy schedule. I'll help you out, whatever you need. The opportunity's available if you want it. And he never talked to me about it again. This was probably midsummer last year. And then I started texting him in like December, January, asking him for more details, and never heard back from him. And I just showed up to a practice in February, and he's like, there you go. I just wanted to see if you were willing to show up. And we just kind of went from there. So he's always looked out for me. Not a guy that's going to like preach at you and say, oh, hey, man, I care about you. I really want you to do well. But he just shows you every single day that he's got your back. And, I'll always be a big Brad Stromdahl fan.
And under his tenure at Georgia Gwinnett College, he was a big part of turning them into a national power that they are now. And then he hops over to Georgia State. This was, I believe, his first full year, you said, after last year got wiped out. But how meaningful is that to you as a former player? Like you said, he didn't have to keep tabs on you. But how meaningful is that to you as an ex-player of his, to have an old coach of yours know what you're getting into now, and say, you know what, I might be able to help you out.
Yeah, I mean, it meant a lot. Like you said, I'm probably not the guy that if you looked at the team, you'd have been like, oh, he's going to stay in touch with that kid. Probably one of the last kids on the list. I mean, to this day, couldn't tell you what he saw in me or why he decided to grab me, and call me after I was done playing. But even in bringing me up and through this opportunity, he was like, hey, we're not sure that the athletic director said, hey, we're not sure if you're going to be able to travel at all. This might be a 4 to 5 game radio type thing. And Stromdahl was like, no, I'll find it in the budget to get you COVID tested every week with the team. We'll make sure you travel. We'll make sure it's worth it for you. And just each time there was a roadblock, if it cost him, personally, he made sure that it could happen and that I could get as much experience and value out of it as possible. And for them just to get, a little bit more exposure and definitely just have more content. That's something that they're working on. But as a coach, man, he's just really good at creating an expectation to win, creating a culture. So that's what they're doing this year from the ground up. It's always tough taking over a new program and keeping the players that were already there. But, I'm excited to see what that program is going to do in the future.
All right, time for our first break here on Behind the Mic. I'll be right back with Caleb on the other side of the break, and we'll bring in our second guest for today, Coach ALLEN Cox. looking forward to this next segment. So come right back with us here on Behind the Mic on ASTV. Again, welcome back to Behind the Mic here on ASTV Productions. Jonathan Hodgson in conversation with Caleb Gay here this week. And joining us now for our second segment is Coach Allen Cox. Allen, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey guys, how you doing? Glad to be on.
Doing well, and you have a lot of familiarity with both of us, and we'll get into some of the stories over the next few minutes here, but I see that background. Where are you joining us from today?
Yeah, I'm coaching a college summer league in Myrtle Beach. I'm here at Ripken Experience in Myrtle, and trying to think what field I'm on Crosley Field. Nice sunny day. The turf is heating up to about 120, so it's snowing where you're at. Sorry, guys.
Hey, now Victoria's no Alberta. We're doing just fine in Victoria.
Much more beautiful than turf, I'm sure.
You always find the best spots. But when I was doing the social media posts for this week's episode, I was starting to go into your resume and read and realizing pretty quick that I'd be there all day if I put everything in your bio from your time coaching at the collegiate levels and high school levels, and being a major league scout for a couple of different organizations. And as I mentioned, you have familiarity with both Caleb and myself. And I was. Do you keep in touch with what Caleb's doing? And how happy are you to see that he's transitioned into a second baseball life?
Yeah, I do. You know, I kind of knew right away when I met him. Great kid. I knew he needed to get a hold of you, so I got you two in contact with each other, and I knew that he wanted that. And I said, I got a guy for you, perfect guy for you, mentor, great kid, great Christian guy that can help you lead the way in all parts of his life that he was looking for. But yeah, you know, he's a program, Coach Stromdahl, over at Georgia State. That program, see it on the rise quickly. He doesn't waste any time. He was at Gwinnett and built that program, and now you'll see those guys over there. They'll be in the top 25 very, very soon if they're not already. So, yeah, very familiar with them and Martinez and those guys over there. But Caleb, you know, very proud of what he's doing, and like it might be like Jensen here soon, and Alex Jensen, and be on the big stage. I don't think.
Yeah, Alex, another one of our star alumni from the Okotoks Dogs days, former broadcast partner of mine when he was in pitching, made his debut on June 1st with the Oakland A's, and I believe he has another game coming up here soon with the A's, so really proud of him. Caleb, what do you remember about playing at GGC for Cox?
Cox was definitely a player's favorite as a coach. Always had guys' backs, that's for sure. Sometimes it got him in trouble with the rest of the coaching staff, but you never wondered as a player if Cox was on your side or not. And I'm glad he got me in touch with you, man. I remember one day I would pray before the game over the team, and I got done, and Cox was like, "You gonna be a pastor or what?" And I was like, "I mean, I don't know about that." And he kind of asked me what I wanted to do, and when I told him what I was doing with my schoolwork, he's like, "All right, I got a guy," and just like gave me your phone number right away. And he checked on me every day to make sure that I was talking to you and in touch with you. So I'll always be thankful for that, that's for sure.
I remember getting a text from you, Allen, and saying that we got this guy down here and interested in doing some broadcast work. Can I put you guys in touch? And we've right away jumped into having some shop talk phone calls about things, and have really enjoyed the conversation and being able to listen into Caleb's work and seeing him progress. So that's been a lot of fun. Really grateful for you to connect us like that. And it leads me into another question for you, Allen. That after what is it now, about 25 years coaching baseball, you've in different spots. You've had a lot of players move on to do some pretty cool things. Whether that be obviously in baseball, that's probably always the number one goal. But what's it like for you when you see players of yours go on to succeed, whether it be in baseball or in other pursuits?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, all that stuff on paper is just it means I've been coaching a long time and had some pretty cool people, guide me the way that I need guided it. But, when you talk about that and as a coach, and as you get older, you definitely, the baseball is set way beyond, it's at the bottom of the list for you, depending on what these guys are doing with their lives and their kids and their families and, their fellowship and what they're moving on to do. And, you follow them all the way through. And then the funny thing about coaching is you get thank yous, 20 years down the line, and we don't do it for that. But they're thanking us without even trying, just by them being, a lot of guys coaching after, I got several guys in Kentucky that are coaching and have academies, and hopefully they're following the lead. And they could be following the lead because they needed to do it better than they got it, which is fine too. But hopefully they found something, and they found a leader, and hopefully I paved the way for them. And that's the number one goal in coaching, especially as you get older, the relationships, and then you win when those guys move on and do things in society.
And just before you joined us here, Allen, we got into talking a little bit about Caleb's relationship with his former head coach at Georgia Gwinnett College, and Brad Stromdahl. And he was part of Caleb going over to Georgia State to broadcast there and get his broadcast career underway. And I think back to you and I's time up in Canada with the Okotoks Dogs program. There's two phases to that program, and you were most often with the youth academy side, and I was most often with the summer collegiate side. So there wasn't always the most overlap with being at the same field at the same time. But I remember lots of times of heading through the coach's office and having a quick talk about the team, the game, life, whatever it might be. Remember crashing on your living room floor a couple of times during road trips and during long homestands. So I really appreciated that and wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for that. But give us a little bit of an update on where you're at now. Obviously, off the top, you said you're in Myrtle Beach right now. I believe coaching in the Myrtle Beach Summer Collegiate League. What else have you got on the go right now?
Yeah, we're finally at the beach. My brother's here. My family's here. We had a stint, like you said. We left the Dogs program, and Alex got it now, and they're doing well. And Arcandia, what he built up there was unreal. And I'm all forever grateful, just like you are, I'm sure, to the Dogs program. And it might be a place to send Caleb here soon in the summer, so he can take that job over for you. But yeah, and then I got to Georgia Gwinnett. Coach Sheets, was a player of mine at Kentucky Wesleyan College. He coached with me in the summer league right out of college. Got to ABCA, and just felt like you needed a guy on his side to be down there with them, and spent a year and a half there. And wife was ready to go to the beach, and so was the family. And so, but there's baseball here, so I'll continue to do baseball. Still doing lessons, still doing camps, and else, no doubt showcases, and we're starting to do some big things there. We got a showcase at Comerica Park at the end of June, which should be a pretty cool event. So basically same thing, just trying to get these guys to the next level, and use my contacts and all the guys at the fraternity that we have over the years to try to get these guys to move on and whatever facet of life they're going into. That's about it. Same thing for 25 years.
And I imagine with the COVID situation appearing to finally be on the improving for good now, hopefully, I imagine that's making things a little bit better as we go along deeper into this year, as opposed to what you were dealing with throughout most of the last 15 months. Just kind of take us into what coaching and showcases and stuff has been like through these challenges.
It didn't affect us as much as they did you guys. We were, Georgia, South Carolina is one of those states where we shut it down for just a little bit, but we kept going, man. And I was blessed to be able to do that in the smaller groups, and luckily we didn't have any cases, with the events we had, and everybody was really careful. But I was blessed to be able to just keep going with that, with baseball. And I feel bad for the guys up there who aren't playing. They need to do something about that. It's not my say, but man, we gotta get these kids outside and playing again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's time for another break here on Behind the Mic. But Allen, thanks so much for joining us here for a few minutes. I knew once I got Caleb on the show this week that you had to be a part of the conversation. So appreciate you coming on and having a little bit of fun with us here today. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Love it.
All right. We'll head to another break here on Behind the Mic, and we'll be back with one more segment here with Caleb Gay when we come back here on Behind the Mic on ASTV.
Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.
And once again, welcome back to Behind the Mic here on ASTV Productions. Many thanks for joining us and tuning us in on your Friday night, wherever you're watching from. Jonathan Hodgson in conversation this week with Caleb Gay, and we just spent our last segment with Coach Allen Cox, which is always a lot of fun. Caleb, thanks again for hanging in with us for the full hour. Going back to our last segment with Coach Cox, as we alluded to, as we talked about, he was with you at Georgia Gwinnett College. He was the hitting coach when you were on the team, and he was with the Okotoks Dogs Academy program for 9 years, also spot duty in the Western Canadian Baseball League. And that's where I knew him from. And before we brought Allen on for the last segment, we were talking about Brad Stromdahl, and I think those two, by the sounds of it, those two are kind of in the same vein for you, of coaches who, and Allen said it, they're not just there for baseball. They're there to help you, go on in life, and they're proud to see you go on to have success in whatever you're doing. So that must be a good feeling to have somebody like Allen to advocate for you and to keep in touch.
Oh, for sure. Coach Cox always kept things lighthearted, man. I only had him my senior year. And like I said, by that time, I was barely ever pitching. My elbow was like shattered. I'm trying to throw submarine, just to stay relevant. And he was always messing with me. And, we'd have some theological debates in the outfield every once in a while. And he'd always just jump into a conversation a player and I were having and just drop some knowledge on us and just have good times, man. So he was, like I said, he was definitely a player's coach. I think sometimes the coaches were like, man, you gotta be their authority. And he's like, just, I wanted to know I'm on their side. And that was a big thing for us. I mean, everybody, no matter if you ended up staying on the team or not. I mean, I know there were guys that couldn't stand the coaching staff and left. And, there's always guys like that on every team, no matter where you go. And all those guys would tell you that they love Cox too. I've never met anybody that, nobody really had like any disagreements with as far as player to coach. It was a lot of fun to be around.
And one thing that has always struck me with him is the ability to connect with everybody. And you mentioned, obviously a player's coach, a fun personality, but I look at his resume and I alluded to some of it.
Yeah.
There's been lots of time in college programs at Georgia Gwinnett, at Kentucky Wesleyan, but there's been lots of time at the high school level as well. A couple of spots in college summer league, instructing at showcases and academies. That's pretty impressive to see that versatility to connect with players at all those different stages and different places.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that definitely inspired me from Stromdahl and from Coach Cox. There's a lot of coaches that go around talking about the things they've accomplished or talking about the guys that they've helped. And those are two guys that they don't really do much talking. Like if you just met Coach Cox, and when I didn't know much about him. He didn't really say, oh, I've been here, I've done that, I've coached these guys. He just did what he did and did as much as he could do to help. And Stromdahl's the same way. Like I meet people now and they'll say, oh, you go to Georgia State, way back in the day, Stromdahl did this for me, or, Stromdahl did that. He helped me in this way, helped me in that way. And there's a lot of coaches that run around saying, oh, I try to help all my players and like honestly don't really do that much. And Stromdahl doesn't preach it. He doesn't talk about it. A lot of people will never know in the ways in which he helped me and the opportunities and doors that he got open for me. And that's just part of the way he does things. So I kind of tried to adopt some qualities that I saw from those guys, which, were to not let my right hand know what my left hand was doing and just do what I did for me and whoever else we're trying to help. And besides that, it's, let God get the glory and the credit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get back into the season at Georgia State a little bit before we let you go here. And we talked a little bit about it off the first block, some of the highlights of the year. And I want to go back into a couple of them a little bit deeper because it's something that you and I have discussed, and I think it would make good discussion on here. And I remember you being a fresh broadcaster in your first season calling college baseball, and when one of your first road series, maybe your first road series, you can the first, okay, was at Vanderbilt, D1 college baseball powerhouse, Arms Factory. And you go in there as a brand new rookie broadcaster to Vanderbilt to call a series, and you got to call a win. What did that feel like? Basically starting your career in that setting?
I had no clue what I was doing, man. That was so intimidating. I felt like everyone was staring through me when I walked, up into that broadcast booth. It was pretty crazy. I think I sent you a picture when I got set up, and even my setup, like people were looking at me through the windows, and all I had was my laptop. We were using the laptop microphone at that point, and they've got teams of volunteer photographers and editors and ops guys, and I'm talking to a social media director who's come from Alabama football, Duke basketball, and Vandy baseball. And like, that's the steps he took. Those are the steps he took to get to where he's at now. And me and him are sharing, a space. And he was like, "How did you get here?" And I was like, I know the coach and I like baseball. Like, it was kind of intimidating. And I remember I texted you the picture and you're like, "Do you have a good sight line down the left field line?" And I was like, "No, but I am not going down there where everybody can look at me. I'm definitely going to stay up here out of everybody's way." I was so nervous, and the game was crazy, man. Once the game got rolling, I think I stopped sweating. It's always that pregame and the preparation and like trying to be a broadcaster that I'm no good at. But once I start just talking about baseball, it's a whole lot of fun. I remember being nervous because they won, and the video guy was there, and right away he was like, "Send me your calls of, this home run and this strikeout." And I was like, I don't even remember what I said. I don't remember what it sounded like. And he used them all and said they were good, and kind of went from there. He started using my calls more and more, which is pretty cool. But I just wish I would have slowed down just a little bit because I was so nervous. I mean, they won, and I was like, "Final score, Georgia State, Vanderbilt, see you guys tomorrow," and just hopped off. And like, it was a win over number 2. It was their biggest win in forever on a Friday night. And I was just like, I couldn't wait to close that laptop just for like to take a deep breath. I felt like for the first 3 or 4 innings, I just could not catch my breath. It's just intimidating, but it was so much fun. And that was kind of the start of that SEC road trip. By the time we went down to Florida and Kentucky, I was just having a blast.
Yeah, and that's something that I try to remember to tell whether it be other broadcasters or other athletes that I'm friends with, is just, if you have an opportunity, just take a minute to look around and take a minute to breathe. Because that was, man, I've done some cool things, but you had me going a little bit when you sent me that picture from Vandy.
Yeah,
no, I was happy for you. One other person that I wanted to talk to you about was your broadcast partner with some of your TV games that you had this spring. Dave Cohen. He's done Georgia State athletics broadcast for, I believe was his 38th year.
Yep.
What was that like, being the rookie, sitting on the desk beside a veteran like Dave Cohen?
It was a lot of fun just to kind of watch and learn, especially the way in which he prepared for a baseball game. He does stuff with football and mainly as a basketball guy, but he's been the voice of the Panthers, like you said, for going on 4 decades now, and he's really good at the process. So I think it was really cool to sit and observe the way he went about his process. And like I said, I thought I was going to kind of sit and listen and learn during the home games he did. And then if he couldn't make it, I'd fill in. And, very quickly he's like, "Hey, take the 3rd, take the 7th and jump in and do some color." And then he was like, "Okay, you got to finish this game." And then, he was like, "Hey, I'm not going to be there. Take the doubleheader." And it kind of went from there. Then every time he was doing a home game, he's like, "Come do the color. I'm tired of talking to myself. I've been talking to myself for 40 years. So, we kind of had a good relationship. I actually played with his son. His son was a pitcher with me over at Georgia Gwinnett College. So that kind of gave us some initial common ground. And it was a lot of fun to bounce back and forth with him. And by the time we got to TV games, he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm not allowed to do them, so I'm going to go." And he was like, "No, I told them that I want you with me. So, let's do color." And that was intimidating too, but big shout out to Dave Cohen for sticking his neck out there for me and just vouching for me, saying that, I'd be a good addition to the broadcast. And those TV games were a lot of fun too. I'll always be thankful for Dave Cohen vouching for me as well.
Yeah. What's that like, having a veteran like him saying, "No, I want you"? Like, that's got to be a big shot in the arm to have somebody like that wants you to be a part of their show.
It was awesome, man. The feedback all the way across the board at Georgia State was amazing. Every once in a while, the athletic director would, tell the coach something that I had said that was good or something he thought I could work on even. Every time somebody said, hey, my parents really appreciate the broadcast, I'd be like, all right, tell them I need their one thing that bothers them, so that I could kind of pick and see what was bothering people or what was good. But with Dave especially, like I said, this was something that when I started, I was hoping to maybe do 4 or 5 games. And then being able to be on the road because of what Stromdahl, another door that Stromdahl opened up, it was, maybe 20 games. And by the time Dave said, hey, whenever I'm here, just come do color, it was almost all the games except TV. And then by the time we were doing TV, he said, hey, come do those too. And be able to do some TV intros on ESPN Plus and have some of my friends and family watch that. That was a big moment for me and something that I didn't expect to happen so quickly for sure. I mean, when I first started at Georgia State in early February, me and you hopped on Zoom and I was like, what's the difference between play-by-play and color? Like I needed a 101 class. And thank goodness I had someone like you from Cox to call Jonathan Hodgson and be like, hey, I need a journalism broadcasting 101 class like yesterday. So please help me out. And man, that was definitely trial and error, but so much fun and had a lot of good people in my corner to make it worthwhile.
I got that text from Cox saying he had a budding broadcaster on the team, and I just said I'm in. And it's been a lot of fun, and I wanted to expand on what you said there about doing play-by-play in color, and like you said, you're hopping into it pretty green there right at the start, but you asked. In our conversations, you asked all the right questions, and I followed up and listened to some of your stuff on when you're doing both roles. And how did you, and you can take this wherever you want, but how did you find your learning process and kind of finding your role and finding your voice in both situations, and how did that learning process go for you?
I think just honestly asking for feedback, not being afraid of criticism, whether it was positive or negative, and just kind of seeing it all as positive, a way to grow. Like you said, I think pretty green is an understatement. I knew baseball and I knew journalism. I knew how to ask an interview question, but I didn't know anything about the ins and outs of broadcasting based on some stuff I hear Matt Vasgersian say on MLB The Show while I'm playing. So it was something that had to be learned quickly. And like I said, trial and error. I kind of went through our Twitter comments after Series 1. West Virginia's fans, they had like 2,000 people listening to our radio broadcast weekend 1. And so they were all in the comments, and we thought at the time that our headsets were hooked up to the computer and the headsets weren't working. So we're talking from 10 feet away to a laptop microphone. And so everybody in the comments was like, hey, the young kid, I never even said my name because I didn't know what I was doing and I was so nervous. They're like, the young kid's got good stuff to say, but he needs to speak up. And I was like, Hodge, I feel like I'm yelling, like what's going on? So had to figure out the tech side, and I had to get better at that and had to figure out how to be confident. I think some of the best conversations I had were definitely with guys like you, met Paul Bird at a charity golf event, and guys that were like, listen, you sound great when you turn into a baseball nerd. Like when something snaps you out of trying to be a broadcaster, you sound good. And so just realizing that I do need to go through the process. I do need to prepare well, but to stop trying to be a good broadcaster, because right now my best strength, Matt Mahoney told me the same thing, is insight, like insight into the game, insight into the details of backroom baseball and baseball 102 that I have experience in. So just talking more about that stuff than trying to find the stat on the 59th page of the notes, to fill time.
Yeah. And that was that was something I picked up on with you and talked about with you as well. And when you were saying before, when we were talking about the Vandy series, about being nervous before you went on and stuff, and I noticed that as well when you get talking about the things that are your specialty, when you get into the nuts and bolts of what's going on out there, and you kind of get wrapped up in the game. That's when you're at your best. Was it kind of similar with some of the nervousness you might have had before some of those games, where when you have time to sit and think about it, you can kind of outthink yourself. But once a game starts, once the light goes on, and you kind of get in the flow, it kind of takes over. Was that kind of what it was like for you?
For sure. I mean, even playing basketball or baseball, like you throw strike one, you're like, all right, I'm going to be fine. You know, playing basketball, you hit your first shot and you're like, okay, it's not going to be a terrible day. And I think broadcasting, it definitely was a lot of the same. And I remember I was so nervous to do intros, like before the game, there was nothing going on. I didn't have anything to talk about yet. And I remember I typed up my intro one game, and you called me that night and we're like, hey, you read your intro today, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, I did. And you're like, you got stuck in your reading voice for like 2 innings. And then I think it was that double steal that we talked about earlier in the show. And you're like, then you were fine. So that was just learning, man, and not being like, well, no, that wasn't my reading voice. You know, I could have been combative or could have taken it the wrong way. But like, I know you had my best interest in mind. And even guys that said little stuff, like I think somebody told me at one point, hey, you say on the outer third and then you say ball, like you're too quick to give the pitch location before there's a call. And so every time you say outer third, in my head, I think strike. And then the umpire's ball. It's the same thing you were saying, pitch stuff. Right out of the hand, you're saying curveball. And then all of a sudden the ball's you can hear the ball being hit. And we don't have anything yet because you're still talking about the pitch type. So slow down a little bit. And I think that was the biggest stuff for me, was just not being afraid of somebody saying, hey, I think you should do this. I think you should do that. And there were some people that said, I don't like the way you say this. And I thought that was my style, and I didn't see a better way to do it. So taking each thing with a grain of salt, but also being wise enough that when Matt Mahoney at GGC or you say, hey, I do things this way, I'm like, yeah, I'm making that change.
And that brings me to something that we talk about a lot on this show with pretty much everybody we bring on, is the importance of relationships. Mm-hmm. And they're huge in broadcasting. Everybody in the business talks about people who've been important to them, people they listen to, people once they get to a certain point, people that they've been able to lend a hand to as well. And I think about that in both of your baseball lives, if I can put it that way. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the conversations you have with people about shop talk or questions about game notes or reviews. And you have that ability to hear, hey, you know what? Here, you know what? Did you do something here? Or, hear that critique, mm-hmm. but know that it's coming from, and where it's coming from, and that it's coming from a place of trying to push you to get you to make you better. Mm-hmm. And I imagine it was the same way in your former life as a player, with people like with people like Coach Stromdahl and Coach Cox. When it came to playing, how important have relationships been to you in both sides of the game?
They've definitely been the biggest thing, I'll tell you that, especially going through so many injuries at GGC. I know that's probably not where you're headed, but that's just a big part of my story at this point, is being basically down for the better part of 3 seasons and wondering, like, why am I here? Why am I on this team? Why am I still a guy that people call when they got questions? And it was just, at the end of the day, I felt like God had me there for relationships, and whether it was for players, coaches, whoever, and getting into travel ball coaching and stuff now, doing lessons and following in the footsteps of guys like Cox and Strom and stuff like that. It's when those coaches don't say anything to you, that's when you start to get worried. And I saw that as a pitcher later in my career. Like, I had been the guy that when I walked somebody, you heard the clipboard smash and, you're like, oh, he's the worst pitcher ever. And when that goes away, that's when you should be worried as a player, right? Because when there's no critique, then they don't see any more potential. Like, there was an outing late in my career, hit 2 or 3 guys in an inning and got out of the inning. And the coach just kind of patted me on the back and said, "Hey, good job." And I was like, that's not good, right? Because there was no critique anymore. And I kind of talked to him about it afterwards. And I was like, "Hey, like, don't give up on me." You know what I mean? And that was Steve Less, my pitching coach at GGC. And that's something I've learned as a coach too. Like when there's no critiques, people generally just don't see any more potential. Like you're kind of at your ceiling, and I never want that by any means. So taking that into broadcasting, if people said something bothered them, or if Stromdahl said, "Hey, you did this well, but I think you could do this better," or Dave said the same thing about if I was bringing too many notes or if I was going to notes too often. If you told me stuff about the way I was saying things or my tone of voice or my inflection, it's, I just try to take it as somebody sees that I have a ceiling and that I can get better and that there's more potential there. I think my parents definitely raised me with that perspective, and I'm thankful for it.
Definitely saw that in you right away, and really proud of the work you turned in your first year, and excited to see where things go for you going forward. So as we look to this summer, what's on deck for your summer?
Right now I'm wrapping up coaching 13U baseball. That's been crazy and exciting. We're headed down to Panama City Beach to wrap things up. I'm also starting up with my 17-year-olds, trying to get them some scholarships and develop as young men and players. That might be involved a little bit with some showcases with some Gwinnett Stripers or Undiscovered stuff. Undiscovered is a company that my buddy Cam Coursey started up. He got drafted by the Diamondbacks out of Georgia Gwinnett College. So excited to do some broadcasting or some showcase announcing type stuff with them, and maybe some Sunbelt summer ball. You never know. Would love to try to make the jump into professional baseball at some point. So just trying to stay fresh, stay ready, and learn from the best. Keep talking to guys like you.
Sounds great. Well, thanks so much for coming on tonight and spending a nice hour with us. Always enjoy talking to you and sharing stories and talking shop. It's been a lot of fun, so thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, we'll take one more break here on Behind the Mic on ASTV Productions. I will be right back to tie a bow on the show and set you up for next week. You're watching Behind the Mic here on ASTV. Once again, welcome back to Behind the Mic on ASTV Productions. Here to wrap up another show. Jonathan Hodgson with you. Just spent a nice hour with Caleb Gay and ALLEN COX, talking about Caleb's first year in the broadcasting world with Georgia State baseball, some of the highlights and learning experiences from his first year behind the mic, and some old stories and fun from his playing days in college at Georgia Gwinnett College with Coach Cox. And once again, we want to thank Coach Cox for coming on in that middle segment and speaking with us. He's somebody who's been important to both of us. So we appreciate him spending a few minutes with us, and we appreciate you spending your Friday night with us wherever you've been watching from. We always appreciate your viewership, and we'll be back with you same time, same place next week, Friday at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, with another conversation with a great sportscaster. And we will reveal next week's guest, which we already have in the bullpen. We'll announce that coming up early next week. You can follow the updates on ASTV's Facebook and Twitter. And of course, like we told you before, you can find all of our shows and archives on the website at astvproductions.com. So once again, for my guests, Caleb Gay and ALLEN COX, this is Jonathan Hodgson saying thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again next Friday.